Thank you, Miriam. Thank you to IJS for giving me this space for practice. In my own practice, I always look through the sacred text as something that sends me, and really the most sacred text is inside me. But sometimes the text that I have inherited from my ancestors can send me to that inner text. And so each week there is a Torah parsha, and there is also a haftarah, a reading from the prophets to inspire me. And also there is a parsha from the Song of Songs, from Shir Hashirim, to send me to the deepest inner teachings of Torah, which are the teachings of love. And so this week, there's an amazing text from chapter 7 of the Song of Songs that might, I think, inspire us in our meditation practice and also in our lives. So let's begin by just taking a look at that. If you would want to share that text. And the words from the Song of Songs says, turn and return, O Shulamit. Turn and return that we may gaze upon you. And it is describing a dance, which is the dance of our lives. So I am reminded that in ancient days, all worship was dance. All worship was dance. And I live in a place where the indigenous people are still continuing that sense that when they want to worship, they dance. And it really reminds me that all of our ancestors danced in order to free ourselves. And Anna Halpern says, just as the ancients danced to call upon the spirits in nature, we too can dance to find the spirits within ourselves that have been long buried and forgotten. So when we meditate, we're doing the dance of teshuvah. And that dance of teshuvah is a dance of turning and returning again. So Gabriel Roth says the purpose of meditation is to still the mind and surrender to the moment. And she says the fastest way I've found to still the mind and be aware of the moment is to move the body. The movement of the body and the movement of life is how we find our stillness. And it's the relationship between the stillness and the movement that constitutes our lives and our meditation practice. So what I'd like to do is to chant these words with a very clear intention. And the intention is twofold. One, in that I see my meditation practice as a kind of a microcosm of my whole life. What happens in 5 minutes of meditation is actually happening in my whole life, which means I kind of lose it and I come back. I forget and I remember. And I can be kind of sometimes annoyed by this, or I can say, oh, well, it's all a dance, and I can enjoy the dance of it. And when I resist the dance, then I suffer. So I want to kind of give myself to the dance of tshuva, the dance of returning. And the name of the woman of the Song of Songs, Hashulamit, speaks to a kind of a possibility that we're moving towards wholeness. That the word Shulamit, kind of hints that the perfected being that we are is emerging through our lives, through our dance, through our practice. And we want to, the question that I ask is both, how do I do my meditation practice in a way that acknowledges this dance of tshuva, of returning each moment to this deepest intention to be in God's presence? And then, how do I live my life as a dance And how do I give myself to the dance of my life? And if I can do it in those few minutes of my meditation, it becomes a kind of a blueprint for how I want to live my life. So, so Jet, if you want to just move it down, just so that we can just see the words of the chant, and I want to ask you to feel your body and and actually let the chant move you, to not only talk about that Shulamit in her beauty and her turning, but see if there's anything in you that wants to move, and that let that movement bring you to the stillness of our meditation practice. So you have total permission to sway, to move, to lift your hand, your leg, your body, and enter into this dance. And when we give ourselves totally to the dance, it feels like it leads us back to center. So we'll chant for a little while, and then we'll go into the silence, and in the silence, notice the dance of tshuva. Shuvi, 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 hashulami. Shuvi, 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 v'nechazeh. Shuvi, shuvi, hashulami. Shuvi, shuvi, v'nechazeh. Shuvi, shuvi, hashulami. Shuvi, shuvi, v'nechazeh. And as we enter the silence, you might begin by noticing the dance of the breath, feeling its movement inside you. Let that movement move you to center, to stillness. And when you wander, just return in the dance of tshuva. And as we move from silence to sound, let the silence really be inside that sound that you make. And as we move from stillness to movement, feel the stillness inside the movement. And let's give ourselves to the dance. Shooby, 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 ונחזבה שובי שובי השולמית שובי שובי ונחזבה שובי שובי השולמית שובי שובי ונחזבה. And Jet, if you can stop the share screen so we can all see each other, and take a look around the dance floor to say, oh, these are my dance partners here, and we'll sing it once more. Shuvi, 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 hashulamit. Just take your hand and let it dance. Shuvi, 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 v'nechazeba. Shuvi, shuvi, hashulamit. Shuvi, shuvi, v'nechazeba. Shuvi, shuvi, hashulamit. Shuvi, shuvi, v'nechazeba.
Thank you so much, Shefa. So we will flow with the dance right into the next movement of our practice, which is that flow of life and death and memory and being in that passageway. And in that expression, if we can, Jet, have the mourner's Kaddish brought to the screen. And for those who would like to, put in the chat the names of those for whom you're saying Kaddish today, whom you're remembering in this dance, in this return to lift up through your prayer and our recitation together the memories of those we are seeing before us, their names on the screen, and as they live today and dance in our lives. So if you'd like to move your body and stand, and if there's a flow of the body that moves through you and physical movement beyond the lips saying the words, invite us into that practice today as we chant, those who wish to, together aloud, unmuting the mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal,
Kadal Vid Kadash
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Say shalom,
Amen.
say shalom, say shalom, All Israel, Tebel Bimu,
Amen.
Amen.
So, thank you, everybody, and again, bring to our awareness the memory of Carl Goebel, in whose honor our sit today is being sponsored by his family. May his memory be a blessing, as all those we've lifted up. We experience them for the blessing that they are. So at this point, we are going to turn to the last 14 minutes of our time together today. If you're able to stay, please stay with us. If you need to move on in the rest of your day, that's part of the flow, that's the dance. And we hope you will return when next you're able to this sit. 12:30 p.m. weekdays. We'll be here tomorrow, Eastern time. So please feel free to respond to what the sit has moved in you, questions you may have for Shefa, questions about any part of what's been raised in your practice today. And anything else you might like to share with us, we're going to ask that you put it in the chat. And Shefa, I want to thank you so much for bringing this beautiful and deep sit in the theme of turning, returning, and dancing our prayers and intentions in a sense of towards that wholeness, embodying shulamit, an expression of wholeness from the root from which we derive shalom. Yeah.
It's also kind of a way of seeing our lives. To say, oh, it's all a dance. It just changes it from being kind of a tragedy to an adventure. It just opens up the possibility that there's like, and I one of my names of God that I love is the great choreographer. I call God the great choreographer because the dance of my life is something I could never have thought up myself. Like I feel like I'm being moved, and we are being moved together towards each other, away from each other, back together again in a great dance. But it's sort of how you see it. It's like.
I have a sense from what you're saying and my experience of the practice today. It's a way of seeing, but not just with those of us who are blessed with the sensory sight, outer sight, but it's a way of seeing that is cellular.
Yeah, and knowing to know my life as a dance, and to notice when I hold back, or when I can give myself to the dance.
I had an experience during the sit of this very kind being reached out to another part of me that was holding back, sitting on the sidelines, and reached out their hand. Would you like to dance? Would you like this dance? Very sweet and unexpected from the grand choreographer. Kat has a question for you. Kat writes, your songs come from such a deep place, apparently from both within you and beyond you. If you don't mind me asking, have you ever had a mystical experience while singing or after singing that you'd be willing to share with us?
Have I ever not had a mystical experience? I see that this, um, when I grew up, I was very shy. I hardly spoke a word, and in a way, that had an inner life, but I was very afraid of the world out there, and very kind of locked up inside myself. And so it was hard for me to speak, and but then I found that I could sing, and so the singing actually is what freed me and allowed all the richness from inside to to come out. And so if I could just, and so that led me to my voice, really, to sing. I don't know if that's, and so I would say the mystical experience is a kind of the oneness of inner and outer, and the freedom to actualize, to express my own uniqueness through my voice, and to then find the way my voice connects with other voices is also kind of an amazing experience, because we create some, not, it's a little hard on Zoom, although I'm beginning to sense the energy on even on Zoom, but to be able to connect with other voices and create something that is so much bigger than anything that I could imagine. Yeah.
I want to combine a couple of the questions here, and in a sense, following up on that, like what's possible and how we actualize or open to that. Laura asks if you have practical suggestions as to how we can give ourselves more fully to the dance each day amidst the often discordant things in our environment. And several people have reflected back and lifted up that paradoxical, through the dance we come to stillness, and in the stillness is the dance. So I'm wondering if there's a relationship there, and practical suggestions, giving ourselves.
It's there's always a part of me that is not singing, and a part of me that is not dancing, and just like you had that experience of being invited in, but I just get curious about, well, where's that resistance coming from? And I do a little bit of an inquiry, and I speak to that part of me, which I call inertia. I speak to that part of me and bring all my love and compassion to that part, because obviously someplace in me got hurt or frozen or silenced, and it is the lifetime journey to unfreeze, to open up, to allow, and to experience a kind of integration of all my parts. So I would say, that to be curious about, like, oh, when I'm chanting, who's not chanting in there? How do I invite that part of me who's sulking in the corner? How do I invite it in? And I was having this conversation with Josh Fagelson a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about self consciousness being the main obstacle, and he just sort of noticed that, like, that self awareness is what we're trying to accomplish. Self awareness becomes God awareness, really. But self consciousness is a kind of the near enemy, So it's like to overcome self consciousness and come into a kind of a self awareness that actually expands the self into its true breadth.
Yeah, and that curiosity to allow it all to be there. Feels like that discernment. It moves from self-consciousness to, self-aware, the awareness itself, being aware of the self being.
It's a risk. We take a risk every time we open or make a sound or move ourselves. We take a risk, but I've just found that it's totally worth it, and that I am I'm also doing through my sound and through the movement. I'm healing myself, and I'm becoming whole.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for acknowledging that there is the perception of risk sometimes if we're that vulnerability that you've named, in giving ourselves over.
And I also want to say that my attitude towards spiritual practice is that I want it to be fun and compelling. And so I want to create a practice that is something I just want to do all the time. And eventually see my life as practice. And so just moving through the day, when I say it's a dance, it's because I'm bringing attention to that movement. I'm bringing reverence to that movement. I'm like amazed at it. And the big thing is coming off of automatic, because I can move through my life totally on automatic and get everything done, but I'll miss
Mm.
the magic of it,
Mhm.
the beauty of it.
So picking up on that, not wanting to miss the magic and the beauty of any given moment in the day as best we can. Harris asks an interesting question in the outer relational or interpersonal relational dimension of the practice. And Harris asks, he notes, not only is the dance of our lives not something we can choreograph ourselves, it's something we could never do alone. So part of my question is how we invite others, perhaps even strangers, to dance with us.
It just is a dance already. It's how I notice it or not.
Mm.
You know, I remember walking down the street in Sydney, Australia, and bumping into everybody because I would always move to the right and they would move to the left when people were walking. And then I realized, like, oh, when I go back to New York City and I walk on the street, we're doing this amazing dance. And, in Australia, I couldn't do it, because I was so accustomed to a certain way of dancing. But I feel like the dance is always happening. I mean, I think that watching cars merge on a highway is like an amazing dance. It's like I don't take it for granted that there is this dance of movement that's happening all the time, and inside my body there's a dance, of the organs and the blood and the lymph and all of it dancing inside me. So I think it's a frame of mind. It's a way
Yeah.
of perceiving.
So I'm going to bring a question from Lori. I think it's an important question in our practice in this cultivating this capacity. What about when we're, there are times in the flow when the cells, the organs, the tissues, everything is flowing vibrantly, moving. What about when the body is in pain, the physical pain? So, Lori asked, like, for example, in physical therapy, I'm told to stop at the first sign of pain. Spiritually speaking, what are your thoughts, Shefa, on leaning into and through pain versus stopping before or at the first sign of pain to allow healing? And I would extrapolate if there's, in a more general question too, if that's available, how do we move with pain, physical, perhaps other dimensions of pain?
I think the important thing in all practice is finding my edge and dancing with it. There is this edge, and my relationship to that edge is all important. It's like when I reach that edge, I don't just pull back. I play with it. I move a slightly past it and then I experiment with that edge, but I become intimate with that edge, and very often my relationship with that edge allows that edge to soften and move, because everything moves. I guess that's
It's
But
so beautiful.
I want to be aware of it somehow, because if I'm not aware of it, I'll just be unconsciously resisting it. And so I need that curiosity about, oh, here's my edge. Can I dance with it? Can I play with it?
Mhm. Mhm. And that's a wonderful place for us to end, sort of at the portal of our own, each of our dances, and getting curious. And where is that edge for each of us as we go into whatever's next in our day? That's by way of thanking you, Shefa, and trying to bring what a drop of time it seems together, really exploring practice and dancing together. To thank you so much for your offering today, the wisdom and movements of your teaching and chant and all that you bring. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody again for being with us today. I would imagine that in the flow of the grand dance and the divine choreographer, our hope and prayer, Shefa, you'll be back with us again before too long. And those of you who are here today, tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern, if you're able, or whenever you next return in the dance. Thank you, and blessings for the dance of today.
Thanks. Good to
Thank
be
you.
with everyone.
Thank you, Shefa.